So I'm sure you've heard by now, but Ubisoft is having a very, very rough week. If we're being honest, it's more like a rough decade when you look at all of the stats that they went through at this latest earnings call. Frankly, none of this is surprising, but it clearly indicates a company that is struggling, doesn't have clear or robust leadership, and is rudderless in the middle of the ocean that is game development. And of course, I'm gonna go through all of the nitty-gritty details with you right now using my degree in corporate finance that I never shut up about, apparently. So we're gonna go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm gonna show you exactly why Ubisoft is freaking out and why their stock is at the lowest point it has been in the last 7 years. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow me on these social media platforms for new original content, especially TikTok, which I've been making a bunch of dedicated TikToks of. So if you follow me there, that'd be awesome. Anyway. Now, the first piece of really worrisome news was that they delayed Skull and Bones, the game you see on screen right now, yet again. In fact, for the 6th time in a row. This game, I guess it doesn't really exist. They just cannot get it out the door no matter how hard they try. It's honestly a little hilarious at this point, but you know what? I just don't even know what to say. It's delayed once again. Honestly, they would have canceled it a long time ago and just counted their losses and moved on, but they apparently have some sort of contract with the government of, I believe, Singapore, which gave them a grant to help with the costs of developing the game using Ubisoft Singapore's labor. And now they have a contractual obligation with the government entity to release the game, so they can't cancel it even if they wanted to. They can't. So now it's just sitting in limbo, and who knows if we'll ever actually get to see it. But you know what? Delays happen, and when that happens, usually we don't see a massive plummet to the stock. So what exactly is going on? Well, you see, Yves Guillemot, the CEO of Ubisoft, one of the founders and one of the family members that runs the Guillemot Family Trust, which then owns Ubisoft. He's kind of the head honcho that's responsible for all of this stuff. He came out during the earnings call just the other day and said, listen, we are having to delay Skull and Bones, and we're also canceling 3 unannounced games. And we have no major releases that we're super confident in the next 2 months. So, sorry. In fact, their next 2 games are going to be Assassin's Creed Mirage, which looks like it's been delayed to the fall, and the Avatar Frontiers of Pandora game, which also looks like it's been delayed to the fall. So they just have nothing once again for like 3 quarters out of the year, which investors don't love. He described how Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope and also Just Dance 2023 underperformed their expectations by a pretty significant amount, which again happens. You don't expect a huge stock price plummet from just a couple of underperforming titles during the holiday season, but you know what? What are you gonna do? It happens. But what really bugs investors is that Ubisoft has canceled now 7 different projects in the last fiscal year alone. 7 projects, major multi-million-dollar games that they just walked away from. And according to the numbers received during this earnings call, that means that they burned roughly $500 million on stuff that just never came out and never went anywhere. Just burning cash, and then they have nothing to show for it. You know, it's one of these moments where I'm like, I'll volunteer to burn that money for you. Yeah, hell, I'll do it for 300 million. You guys can keep 200 million. I'll just burn 300 million. Hell, I'll do it for $1 million. I'll do it for $100 actually. Give me $100. You can keep the rest of the $299,999,900 and we'll be happy. And I'll just burn that rest of it. And at least I'll say like, thank you for the opportunity. This was kind of fun. It's just baffling that they can waste so much money and have nothing to show for it. And honestly, 99% of the time when you see this type of thing, it's because the leadership is incompetent and they can't motivate employees to get projects done. They don't know how to schedule. They don't have the vision to see a project that has potential and see it all the way through. It's the same exact thing we're seeing with Meta, which used to be Facebook now, where Mark Zuckerberg is doubling down on the Meta thing, even though nobody really cares about the metaverse, but he's spending billions and billions of dollars on it. And as a result, his stock price is plummeting. Honestly, this thing usually indicates that the leadership with the company isn't working and that they need a shake up. And also usually it means that there's a little bit of ego involved, because if the board of directors had any cojones, they would have kicked these people out a long time ago and avoided this mess to begin with. But part of the reason they haven't fired the CEO and all of the other executives is because The board of directors is made up of the Guillemot family almost entirely. So you can't really just kick out yourselves. And unfortunately, that's been the story of Ubisoft for the last decade or so. Games have come and gone. They've tried to put out some big releases, tried to have their own Call of Duties and Apexes and Fortnites, and all of them have fallen flat. Games like Hyperscape, X-Defiant, which I'm sure nobody remembers, and The Division Heartland all have just floundered, been forgotten, or have been sitting in development hell and nobody knows what's going on with them. But why exactly has the board of directors not just come in and said, listen, Guillemot, Eve, buddy, pal, this isn't working. You don't know what you're doing. And the company's stock price is at the lowest level it has been in almost a decade. This just isn't working. Bye-bye, we're gonna get a new CEO in here. Why don't they do that? Well, because Yves Guillemot, like I said, is one of the founding members, and Ubisoft is run more like a family business than I think a lot of people may realize. You see, to make it really simple, Ubisoft is a corporation and it's publicly traded, but it is owned by a bunch of different little groups, and the majority owner is the Guillemot Family Trust. So all of these brothers own a controlling stake of Ubisoft, which keeps them in power and in control of the company, while also benefiting from it being publicly traded and having their wealth tied up in a publicly traded stock. But that also means that you can't just fire one of the Guillemots. Like, they're kind of the mob family at the top of this pyramid, and you can't knock them off their perch unless they want to be knocked off. And as a result, the management and executives within Ubisoft are kind of holding the company hostage. And that really explains why they haven't been able to do much of anything in the last 5 years decently well. It's because it's not run like a company where they hire the best people for the job. It's where they're hiring their brothers, their cousins, their nephews, and anybody else who has a nepotistic relation to the executives instead of the people most qualified. Furthermore, they keep doubling down on projects that are broken piles of garbage, or that players don't want, but that they're pursuing in the hopes of getting a quick cash grab. Do you guys remember Ubisoft Quartz? Probably not, because they tried to bury it really quickly once it was announced, even though it still seems to be a thing that they hope to implement in the future. What Ubisoft Quartz is an online platform for buying and selling NFTs within their games. And the ultimate vision of this platform was basically that they could sell you a skin or something like that, and then you could resell it to somebody else for real world money or in-game currency. But either way, Ubisoft would take a cut each time a sale takes place within their marketplace. So every single time you acquire an NFT, whether it's for the first time or buying a used one or reselling one, Ubisoft still gets a cut. They looked at this and said, wow, it's basically free money because it's basically a pyramid scheme. And they thought it was a great idea. Problem is, players hate it. And the moment you announce NFTs, everybody mocks you and teases the ever-living shit out of you, which is exactly what happened. But by some reports, they spent tens of millions of dollars developing this, possibly even as much as $100 million trying to build out this platform. Now, the accounting is really messy, and by some accounts, you could say that, oh, well, we built out this system, which will create these assets that we arbitrarily value at this price, so we can say we spent more on it than we actually did for tax purposes. That's super sketchy, and I don't know about accounting standards in like Europe and France, so I don't know if that's actually something they're allowed to do, but either way, it's very, very fishy. Shocker, NFTs are really fishy. But pretty much all of this came to a head the other day when this earnings call came out, and basically executives had nothing positive to say. Ubisoft's canceling a bunch of games. They're describing how they're going to downsize over the next 2 years by allowing natural attrition to take place, which basically means letting people quit and move to other companies. And then also targeted restructurings, which means firings and downsizing, and then also getting rid of non-core assets of the business, which again means closing offices, getting rid of leases that are really expensive, and moving on from there. Either way, for the next 2 years, until Assassin's Creed Infinity comes out, which they hope to be their saving grace, the company's gonna be in some serious trouble. You don't even just have to look at the 5-day graph for Ubisoft. I mean, as you can see, on January 11th, it was trading around 24.25. and then it drops all the way down into the mid 19 euros, and then it bounces back a little bit, but not a whole lot. What's really telling is if you go 5 years, you see it's at the lowest point in 5 years. That's a little depressing, but if you go max, you can actually go back and see when the last time was that it was trading around this point. And that was all the way back right in the early months of 2016. And to put that in perspective, in 2016, Ubisoft's latest major franchise release was Assassin's Creed Syndicate. That's how long ago we're talking. And I mean, in the simplest terms, investors currently are looking at Ubisoft and saying that all of the value and hopes that they had about the company, all for the last 5, 6, 7 years, they're going back on all of it. They think that the company is worth just as much as it was 7 years ago, and all of the progress and wealth that they've built over the last 7 years is wiped out. Investors have zero confidence in the leadership of Ubisoft, and apparently they're not going to be able to do anything about it because the owners and leading shareholders have a stranglehold on the business and will not leave unless they want to, which they don't want to. But you may be saying, Luke, how do we know that the leadership is really the problem? Maybe they're aware that they are not leading this ship in the right direction and they're going to course correct. Maybe you're being too harsh towards Yves Guillemot and his lovely brothers. Well, I mean, look at this. This is a statement from the earnings call that we've been talking about this whole video. And as reported here by American Truck Songs 9, just kidding, American Truck Songs 9 is actually Ethan Gach, I think is his last name, who is a senior reporter at Kotaku. So he's an actual journalist. This isn't just some random person. After a terrible 2022, Ubisoft's Yves Guillemot tells staff the next year is crucial, telling them in an email to the staff, quote, that the ball is in your court, end quote, to deliver on time and on budget. Continuing on saying, today, more than ever, I need your full energy and commitment to ensure we get back on the path to success. He is literally blaming the staff for not getting games out on time, for causing them to make delays and cancel projects, and saying, you know what, the ball's in your court if you want to save this company. It's up to you guys now. Instead of taking accountability and responsibility for the business that he's been in charge of for decades at this point, he's now just saying, nope, it's your problem, fix it. Otherwise, you're going to be fired and we're all going to lose our jobs. So it's up to you guys. And this brings me to perhaps one of Ubisoft's biggest issues in the coming years. Video game development is extremely competitive, and there are some amazingly talented artists and creative types that work within Ubisoft. And Ubisoft needs those people to stay at Ubisoft and not move to other studios. But here's the thing. Ubisoft already has a pretty negative reputation in the industry. People think of their games as being like kind of lazy, thrown together, and just kind of patchworked. Secondly, Ubisoft's leadership is reportedly extremely toxic, and they haven't taken the accusations or allegations of abuse very seriously at all. In many cases, just moving those abusive managers to different managerial positions in the company. Basically saying like, oh, there's a rabid dog in this neighborhood that keeps biting students on the way to school. That's a problem. Well, we're going to take that dog and put him in this neighborhood. Like, they're shocked when people are still upset that the rabid dog is biting people. Like, no, the dog's got to be put down. I'm sorry. It's got to happen. Or send him off into the forest. You know, something. You got to get him out from where he can harm people and where problems are being created. And instead, they're just like, oh, we'll just move him over here. It'll be fine. And then they're shocked when employees are upset. And as a result, the work culture there is fairly negative. I've spoken to a handful of people I know who I've come to meet over the last few years of doing a lot of critiques and videos on Assassin's Creed. Some amazing people who work within these studios. And they are all crestfallen, and they feel as though their leadership doesn't really care about them. They're just trying to save their own asses, and that they'll throw everybody under the bus before they accept that they are, in fact, the problem. And unfortunately, I see no evidence or reason to think that Ubisoft's going to snap out of this anytime soon. And frankly, I would say that this could be a major strike against Assassin's Creed Infinity and any other Ubisoft game that you were potentially excited for in the next few years. You see, Ubisoft is on very shaky ground right now, and they need a hit and they need money. And that means that they're probably going to try and milk every franchise that they have and every upcoming release for the next 12 months that they have for all they're worth. That means Avatar probably filled to the brim with monetization strategies and tactics trying to get you to spend more money so that they can capitalize on that fully. And honestly, probably something similar with Assassin's Creed Mirage. I've been very skeptical of that game ever since it was announced, and then they opened up pre-orders and collector's edition sales, even though we haven't even seen the game. And this is just one more nail in that coffin that makes me extremely suspicious and worried for the future of this franchise that I frankly do care about, and I would like to see Assassin's Creed get a resurgence, but this is not good. You know, I had a professor in college, a very nice man that had moved over here from China just like 2 years before, named Mr. Meow. I don't know if he'll ever see this, but hi, Mr. Meow, if you ever see this. And he was a very, very sweet guy and sharp as a tack. And one of the things he told us about evaluating companies to potentially invest in was, if you ever have a company you're looking at and their executive leadership is, for one, lacking self-awareness, or in this case, just like very arrogant, refusing to accept they're the problem, but lacking self-awareness. And two, they're desperate. Never trust them to make intelligent decisions. And he was like, name me an example of a company that has had desperate leadership that refuses to take accountability, and tell me whether or not they ever figured it out. And every example people could name, no, they all kind of fell apart, or they got leadership in place that saved it. Apple in the 90s was falling apart, was a total train wreck. They brought in the CEO from Pepsi to try to save it. He didn't know what he was doing, and the company was diving into the ground. And then Steve Jobs came in and said, listen, no, we've got problems. It was weird to think that Steve Jobs could be humble, but he was humble enough to recognize the company was not working as it was, and it was the leadership's fault. And so then they reevaluated everything and saved the business, and now Apple is a $2 trillion company. The difference here is that there is not a board of directors to fire the CEO and get somebody new in, because the CEO has a stranglehold on the board of directors and has his job locked in, basically. So as far as I can tell, Ubisoft is either going to sink or swim with the Guillemot brothers on top. And frankly, I don't see the leadership that has been making ridiculous decisions over the last 15 years at the helm of Ubisoft. I don't see them magically figuring it out now. I don't think that they will suddenly become competent. I don't think they'll suddenly figure out how to make perfect games that sell out and are nominated for Game of the Year regularly. I don't see them figuring that out anytime soon. And I would expect that they just try to keep doing what they've been doing, which is trying to seek out quick cash grabs to try and save themselves from the mess that they've created, while also simultaneously refusing to accept responsibility for the mess that they've created. And listen, I've been called many times a Ubisoft fanboy because I've critiqued most of their major releases in the Assassin's Creed franchise. And honestly, I'm a fan of Assassin's Creed. I really hope that they figure this out. I mean, hell, you could see my chair, which is an Assassin's Creed themed chair. Like, I like this franchise. However, I am in no way blind to the unbelievable mistakes that the leadership has been making over the last ever. And it hurts all the more because I used to really love Assassin's Creed. I used to really look forward to every new release, and I was excited to see what they would do, but they have steadily burned me every time I get hyped over this stuff. And at this point, I feel much more like a hater than a fan. And that sucks because I remember being a fan and I remember liking the feeling of being a fan. But honestly, like, if the dog keeps biting you, eventually you gotta decide, well, maybe this dog doesn't like me and maybe I shouldn't like this dog. So I'm sorry to come in with another video where I just complain about Ubisoft being terrible and doing stupid stuff. I know these videos are kind of a dime a dozen these days, and I was hoping they would start to figure it out, but it seems like that's not happening. They're canceling more games than ever. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to start downsizing and probably monetizing the games that they do have coming down the pike all the more heavily to try and make up the difference. And so I would say this is probably a very dark time for Ubisoft, a dark time to be a Ubisoft fan. And I don't expect it to get any better in the next 2 years. Maybe in 3 years when Assassin's Creed Infinity comes out, it'll be awesome. But right now I'm very, very worried about what Avatar is going to look like and also what Assassin's Creed Mirage is going to look like. because this ain't a good sign. But as always, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Follow me on those social media that I outlined earlier. They'll be in the link tree in the description box below. And I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, streaming on Luke Stevens Live. You can just look up in the YouTube search bar, Luke Stevens Live, and you'll find me whenever I'm live streaming. We have live stream highlights, clips, all sorts of stuff there that doesn't make it on this channel. So if you're interested, go check that out. I'll probably be live at this very moment you're watching this video, so come say hi. And if you want to join my Discord, I am over there 30 minutes before every live stream, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So again, if you want to hang out with me there, go check it out. Links below. But with that, I'm going to call it. Thanks for watching. I love you all more than you could possibly know, and I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.